Hey, how's it going? So it's been a bit of a while. Believe it or not, I got into a game recently called RuneScape that I played a couple of times as a kid, and then got more into recently, sort of during, 2020, the dark times. But I stopped playing as life got in the way and other games took a main stage. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, and I began watching a lot of old school RuneScape YouTubers and following their journey and creating their accounts, and some more interesting ones that took my eye based on the Ironman game mode. Now, if you're not familiar with this concept, let me spend a quick 30 seconds to explain what an Iron Man actually is. So Iron Man isn't just a sort of Marvel superhero, it's a concept in gaming where you create an account, but it's locked and restricted to only being able to use its own items. Everything that you use, you have to craft or smith from scratch, and you physically cannot trade with other players. In an MMO, usually trading is one of the most main staples of this genre. Being able to buy or sell items in exchange for other items, and locking yourself out of this, can provide some really interesting entertainment and gives you a more fulfilling sense of achievement with every single item and bit of progress that you get. So where have I got up to on the account so far? Originally, I didn't really record much on this account because I didn't intend to make a video, so quite a lot of the progress is not actually recorded. I first started running through this efficient Iron Man guide that I'd found online. Eventually I stopped following it because I realised the point of an MMO is to create your own adventure, and considering I hadn't played this game in a while, I had a lot to explore and do. But at the time I thought that I'd already played the early game, so I was just focused on speeding up and getting some of the quests and grinds over with. From watching these guides, I realised that the first thing I need to do is to get to a place called Wintertot to train firemaking, and this requires 50 firemaking to access. So this meant I've got to start my grind of chopping down trees and setting them on fire. And the progression looks pretty simple. You first start off with the regular logs until you get to level 15, and then you can start chopping oaks at level 15, and then setting them on fire at 15, and then willows at level 30. From then, I just sort of did willows until level 50, but I kept going a bit because I wanted wood cutting and firemaking to be around the same level, and I think firemaking just trains a little bit faster. And then afterwards, it was off to Wintertot. On most Iron Man accounts, they recommend that you do a minigame called Wintertot to train your firemaking, and give you some starting cash and items. The main reason most accounts do this first is because the lower health that you have, the less damage you take, and therefore you buy less expensive food that you would be using to heal higher hit points later on. It's not going to be a guide or anything, but I'll quickly run through you how the average game of Wintertot looks like. The goal in this minigame is to kill the Wintertot, a boss that's currently kept subdued by 4 wizards who keep the place warm in order to not let this monster escape. Yeah, I know, it's a weird concept. All we have to do is provide the firewood for the burners so that we can keep the fire lit. I'll quickly run through how this works. First, you go over to this glowing root called a broomer root, you chop it away until you have a full inventory of logs, and then with a knife you fletch these into kindling. Once you've done that, you run over to the burner and place them all inside. I know, this sounds like riveting gameplay. I'll be honest, you're lucky I'm animating this because this is what the gameplay actually looks like. Oh, stop taking damage, just fletch the log. AFK for 2 seconds and now I'm already half my health. Oh my god. I've pressed this about 3 times, please. Just fletch. But it's making a tune now, listen. This man is naked. He's in a bunny suit. What are people wearing? Now, some people do this till level 99, but I don't have much patience, so I did it to around level 70, which is pretty good, and should give us all the unlocks that we need for firemaking. Just to note, no skills train like this normally. Level 70 in most skills takes a big chunk of time. Firemaking is one of those skills that they've added new methods to train to that makes this so much more simpler and easier than it was previously. Before, you just have to make a big long line of wood and logs and just burn them. After I'd got the desired firemaking level, I decided that it's probably best now to move over to the combat skills. It's probably the skill that I enjoyed the most when I was playing this, but the early levels were always a bit of a slog. So I trained at sand crabs because they give good XP and I can AFK them whilst I work my 9 to 5. On top of that, they also have some easy clue scrolls, which allows us to do these little treasure hunt things that give us some really good early game loot. And we get some black plate body, a sword and a staff of air. I don't have any staffs, so that's good. The black plate body is an upgrade, so let's have a quick look. Yeah, a little bit better than our current Iron Man plate body, so I'll definitely keep it. This is pretty nice. After I'd made a decent chunk of progress into the melee combat skills, I decided it's now best to move over to magic. First, I did a quick quest called Witch's Potion that got me to level 7 magic. Now I could cast some of the damaging spells. I then moved over to the Wizard's Tower because I found a pretty decent spot that allowed me to kill a demon behind the cage. They've got pretty high hit points, so that means I can click once and then just sort of AFK for a good few minutes. The only downside is that I don't don't get any money back from these kills, but I'm not going to get much back from these demons anyway, because they're quite mid-level monsters. And we managed to use all those runes and get to 45 magic. That gives us a serious amount of unlock. Teleport to house, a load of the teleports, superheat item, and finally the Camelot teleport, which should be quite useful, because I don't think we actually have any teleports around that area of the game. Since I was doing magic, I thought it'd be probably good to get the rune crafting level up as well, so later on we can use these runes to cast more spells and get more levels. It also allowed me to have a look at some of the newer content that they've added, and they've changed this skill up quite a bit by adding this Temple of the Eye quest. Whoa, this is a cool portal. I left before they added this minigame, so this whole quest line was completely new to me, and I've got to say they've really outdone themselves. This newer content somehow fits in with the RuneScape game, but also just adds so much more. And I remember rune crafting used to be a really crap skill, and now they've just turned it into something really fun. Plus it's beneficial. I wasn't actually expecting to get any levels from this, but I'd somehow boosted my level up from, I don't know, 9 or something, and I really wasn't expecting such a bump. 27. What? Okay. Wow. Okay, this is... that's crazy. Right, let's have a quick look. Sorry, so we've just skipped a huge amount of quests here. We can now craft cosmic runes. I won't go through the mini-game because I've already discussed Wintertot, and if I did this for every mini-game, I think it would just get boring very quickly. But it's a really fun mini-game. Trains up the level faster than you could do it normally, and it's great for Ironman because you don't actually need any materials to start. Plus, the rewards are really nice, and whilst you're crafting runes, you can keep these runes for later on. Large pouch. Can we even use that? Okay, right, interesting. Abyssal needle as well. What's this? In total, from 51 games, we got some really good rewards. We got some nature runes, lore runes, all sorts of things to get our magic level up. If we're strapped for cash, we can always sell these, and the nature runes should be really good for high alch, which allows us to get some more money. My next goal was range, and following that guide that I saw previously, apparently this bone crossbow is really useful. It requires a couple of quests to be completed before we get access to it, so the first one was Goblin Diplomacy, and then followed by the Lost Tribe quest. We also get a ring slot. I don't think we actually have a single thing for our ring slot. And we get 30 mining. I don't remember that being a part of the thing. Which gave us access to the Dorgish Khan. I think that's how you pronounce it, Dorgish Khan. The mine and the city, which is basically the home of the cave goblins, who will actually sell this bone crossbow for quite cheap, to be honest. And the ammo almost costs nothing as well, so that's also really good money-wise. But this was the first time that I'd actually seen this place. And I know this is content from 2005, but it still really holds up. And quite a nice little place. Anyway, back onto a little bit more questing. The next quest to complete was the Death to the Dorgishan. This unlocks the special attack of the crossbow and also had some thieving and range XP. Oh hey, Sigmund's dead. We've sorted out the quest, finally. Nice, okay, 2k thieving and 2k range. That should give us a couple of levels on both of those. And then Horror of the Deep, which gave us a couple more levels. Hey, nice. Right, we've now finished the quest, and that should get us up to... There we go. Good levels. Nice. Fantastic. And access to a pretty nifty little prayer book in the offhand slot. Damaged book. This is 5 more prayer. Cool. Okay, good. The last combat level to train up was the prayer level. Now, prayer is a pretty expensive skill normally when you're playing on your main, but obviously here we have to get the bones ourselves. I had a look at the best methods of getting bones, and it seemed like dragon bones were really good. Plus, you could safe spot green dragons in the wilderness, which meant that I wouldn't be using supplies, but I would risk getting killed by a PKer, as you can get attacked in the wilderness. But luckily, I didn't have much trouble, and I collected, I think, about 100 or so bones. Plus, we were able to use that bone crossbow that we got earlier to continue getting more and more range levels and training in. I think at the end, we probably managed to get to about 40 range. Now normally you can bury these bones for the standard XP rate, or you can bury them in different certain ways to get more XP out of your bones. Altars around the game can give you maybe 2 times experience, and you can even have an altar in your own house that you can get to about 3.5 times experience. But there's a really risky strategy where if you go to the wilderness, there's a chaos altar, and this altar gives you 3.5 times experience, which is the same experience you can have using your altar at your home, but this has a little twist. Every bone you use has a 50% chance to be used up. So using some basic maths, you can get 7 times the amount of experience you would get versus just burying the bones regularly. Again, the only downside is that you can be killed at some point, but if I'm just bringing a whole inventory of 28 bones, it's not too much of a deal if I got killed. Throughout the trip, I saw one person who I didn't actually think was attacking me, but my mouse was hovering over the logout button for so long, I didn't really give it a second guess. I panicked so hard. Okay, Jesus, this I'm on edge. Other than that, I used up all of my bones and got to 43 prayer, which is actually a really significant level because it allows me to use all the protection prayers. The protection prayers allow you to block every single incoming bit of damage of that type. For example, the range, melee, or mage, which is really good for things like Slayer, where most of the mobs are only going to be using one attack style. It's also a necessity for things like bossing later on. I thought I'd try my luck and get an upgrade for my current melee weapon. I've been rocking around with this mithril scimitar when I was fighting sand crabs, but now that I had 40 attack, I wanted to get an upgrade. I found out that the rune scimitar is dropped by these Zamorak warriors that I could safe spot behind a little mini volcano thingy. And sure enough, I got one pretty quickly. Oh, yes! Oh, we got it! Finally. Rune scimitar, oh my gosh, yes. Perfecto. Jeez. Afterwards, I thought I'd do a bit more AFK sand crabs, and then I did some Slayer tasks to hopefully get a bit of a start on my Slayer journey. I then cracked out a bunch of small quests, the first being Tourist Trap, which allowed me to get 2 lots of 5k XP in a bunch of different skills, and I chose Agility, just because it saves an absolute ton of time doing these obstacle courses. I then did Elemental Workshop 1 and 2 to get some crafting and smithing XP, Witch's House, which gives us some more hit points experience, and then lastly Jungle Potion for Herblore. Eventually you want to start getting a dent in these Herblore levels, as apparently these are the hardest ones to get on Ironman, which does make sense as some of the later game herbs seem to be quite hard to come by. And lastly, we got one of the best upgrades we can get on the account so far, the Fairy Rings. It involved us doing the Nature Spirit quest, then the Lost City quest to get access to Zonaris, which I think is the equivalent to RuneScape's Moon on Gillinor or something. It's really confusing. And then Fairy Tale Part 1, which involved us killing the dreaded Tanglefoot. You do damage to this mob based on your farming level, and we had about, I think it was like level 10. So it did take a while, but eventually we got there and we completed that quest. And lastly, to get access to the Fairy Ring network, we only had to complete the first part of the second quest in the series, Fairy Tale Part 2. The Fairy Ring network is all around RuneScape, which means it's a really great unlock, as we don't have all of the teleports yet with magic. So this is the next best thing. And it gives us some access to some areas that wouldn't be very accessible with teleports anyway. But I think that's probably a good point to wrap up episode 1. Apologies if this video was a little bit all over the place. It's my first time making a video in what feels like about 5 years, I think. So I'm still getting used to the whole formula. Plus I wanted to get some experience of making some animation, so hopefully some of the later episodes can have some cool animated segments and maybe some cinematic moments. I don't want to spoil too much of what I've got planned for the next episode, but I'll give you a little hint. We're going to go down into the sewers.